Welcome to this edition of Political Empire. We have a good show for you today. We're going to start with a conversation with our Sacramento correspondent, Jim Miller, who's going to be headed to the State Democratic Convention this weekend in San Diego. We're going to talk with David Olson about this very important Prop 8 decision that came down this week. And later in the show, we're going to talk with Alicia Robinson, our City Hall reporter, about some of the fundraising numbers in the Riverside City mayor's race. But first, we're going to talk with Jim. Jim, thanks for being with us on the phone from Sacramento today. This weekend, the California Democratic Party convention is in San Diego. What's going to happen there?
Sure. Yes, this is the only state party gathering this year, and it comes a few months ahead of the June election. Delegates will be hearing from U.S. Senators Al Franken from Minnesota and Dianne Feinstein from California, who is running for re-election this year. They also will be doing endorsement caucuses.
Yeah, the endorsement. Tell me a little bit about that process. Why is this important this weekend? This is probably their only chance for the candidates to make their pitch to get that formal endorsement from the state party?
Yeah, correct. In the past, the party's endorsement was mostly an inside thing. There were some benefits, such as discounts on campaign mail, for example, but with the debut of the top two primary in June, candidates will be listed just as having a preferred party, but the sample ballot will list those candidates that have been endorsed by the party. So that could be pretty critical in competitive races where voters will be trying to find who the endorsed candidate is.
Right, yeah, that's probably particularly important if, for example, there are ultimately two Democrats running against each other in the general election in November. Now, what races are you going to be on a lookout for this weekend when you're there at the convention?
Right, there are three races in our area that where there will be caucuses this weekend. There's the 31st Senate District in Riverside County. You have former inland lawmaker Steve Clute and attorney Richard Roth. There's the 47th Assembly District in San Bernardino County, where you have Rialto Councilman Joe Baca Jr. and newspaper publisher Cheryl Brown. And then perhaps the big contest is the 35th Congressional District, where you have Congressman Joe Baca from Rialto and State Senator Gloria Grady McLeod from Chino. And they all will be seeking the party's endorsement.
So how does it actually work? Are there delegates that vote on these endorsements? How does that process actually work?
It is a complicated process, and some delegates are named by a member of Congress or a member of the state Senate or a member of the Assembly. Some are named by a Democratic nominee from 2 years ago who was unsuccessful. Some come from the party central committee. Others ran to be delegates by Assembly district, and there are several of those from each Assembly district. And then, to make it a little more confusing, some are nominated by office holders from outside the area. There appears to be at least one delegate who was named by a congressman from Los Angeles County who will be participating in the caucuses for the 35th Congressional District this weekend.
That'll
be interesting to see how those shake out.
Yeah, that ought to make it interesting to have someone from Los Angeles weighing in on a possible endorsement for the inland area. So Jim, we appreciate you taking a few minutes to chat with us on the phone, and good luck there at the convention this weekend. Of course, you can follow Jim's coverage of the upcoming State Democratic Party convention in San Diego in the Press Enterprise and on PE.com. Jim, thanks for being here.
Sure thing. Thank you.
And when we return, we're going to talk with David Olson about this very important Prop 8 decision. Of course, Prop 8 was the decision, the ballot measure concerning gay marriage in California. When we return, we'll talk to him about the decision and what it means for the state.
We cover the issues you care about. Here at the Press Enterprise and PE.com, local news matters whether you live along Route 66 or on Main Street. We provide regional analysis and in-depth investigation of issues like education, transportation, the environment, and much more. Important matters are covered here. That is how we keep you connected to your community. The Press Enterprise and PE.com. For home delivery, call 1-800-794-NEWS.
Hi, I'm Dwayne Gang, and this is Political Empire, and I'm joined now by David Olson, who's been following the Prop 8 issue here in California. And the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal just made a pretty significant decision. So I'm going to be joined by David here to talk about this. So David, thanks for being here. So the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, federal court, what did they rule on this week, and how did we get into this position in the first place?
Well, Dwayne, the court upheld the 2010 U.S. District Court decision that said that Prop 8, and that's the 2008 voter initiative that banned same-sex marriage, that Prop 8 violates the U.S. Constitution, the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. What's interesting about this decision, though, a lot of people on both sides were hoping that this would go to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court would make a once-and-for-all national decision on this. Legal experts I talked to think this may have been too narrowly worded decision for that to happen, that it's too focused on Prop 8 and on California, and now there is less of a sense that the Supreme Court may take this up, so this may only apply to California. And so we may not have a national decision on same-sex marriage for a longer time than people had anticipated.
And does that mean that there is going to be kind of now a rush again for same-sex couples to try to get out there and maybe in this window, in this period of time, get out there and get married?
People I talked to said no. First of all, there's going to be, if there is an appeal, and the supporters of Prop 8 immediately announced they would appeal. I talked with a guy from the Riverside-based California Family Council who is chairman of ProtectMarriage.com. 2 minutes after the decision was handed down, he said, we're going to appeal. So that's a sure thing. If that happens, there's basically going to be a 21-day stay at least, and people I talked to said it's almost surely going to be extended past 21 days, probably until the Supreme Court decides what to do. So it'll probably be at least a few months of no same-sex marriages until the Supreme Court decides whether to take the case. So there's no rush, and I called the clerks of both San Bernardino and Riverside counties. No one's even called, so I think people have been through this enough to know that these court matters take a long time, and no one is rushing to the courthouse yet.
What about inland same-sex couples in the inland area? What's been their reaction to the decision?
You know, I talked to a woman a few minutes after the decision was announced or posted on the court's website a little before 10 o'clock, and she was in tears. And she said that she didn't expect to be in tears because she was, most people had expected the Ninth Circuit to rule against Prop 8 based upon some of the hearings several months ago. But she said she was still really emotional by it, that it affirmed her relationship. She wants to get married to her partner as soon as same-sex marriage is legal in California. So she was in tears. And another woman I talked to, same thing, she wants to marry her partner, and she was very emotional and just ecstatic, basically.
Well, this is definitely a hot-button issue, not only in California, but across the nation, and a lot of eyes are on California on this issue. So, David, appreciate you joining us, and you can read David's stories about Prop 8 in the Press Enterprise and, of course, on PE.com.
We cover the issues you care about. Here at the Press Enterprise and PE.com, local news matters whether you live along Route 66 or on Main Street. We provide regional analysis and in-depth investigation of issues like education, transportation, the environment, and much more. Important matters are covered here. That is how we keep you connected to your community. The Press Enterprise and PE.com. For home delivery, call 1-800-794-NEWS.
I'm joined now by Alicia Robinson, our Riverside City Hall reporter. We're going to go over some of the campaign finance numbers in the Riverside mayor's race. We didn't get a chance to go over these during our show last week. So Alicia, thanks for joining us. We've got numbers on 4 of the candidates. We're going to go over those. I'm going to read some of these numbers now. These are some of the fundraising totals that were from the last 6 months of 2011. So this would be money raised from July 1st through December 31st. The big leader in fundraising for that period is actually William Rusty Bailey. So Councilman Rusty Bailey, he raised $56,716 during the period. The next candidate, Ed Atkinson, raised $36,510 during the period. followed then by Mike Gardner, who raised just shy or about $19,500, so just under $20,000, and then followed by Andy Melendrez, another city councilman, with $16,000. Of course, Mike Gardner is also a member of the city council. Now let's take a look at cash on hand. This is how much money they actually had in the bank at the start of 2012 to spend on campaign activities. Ed Atkinson got the most cash on hand, just about $75,700, almost $75,800 in the bank. Rusty Bailey is next, $38,847 in the bank. Let's see, Andy Melendrez, $16,000, and Mike Gardner about $11,000 in the bank. So when you first saw these numbers, I know you had mentioned that we were going to see probably some totals all over the map here a little bit. So what is your initial reaction to these fundraising totals?
Well, I think that it bears out what I said on our first show, which is, yeah, the spending is going to be all over the place. I think so far it looks like Ed Atkinson, he's a former councilman, by the way, is probably going to be the biggest spender. He started his campaign way back in early 2010 and has been fundraising pretty much all along. For the entire election cycle, according to his reports, he's raised close to $130,000. No one else is even close to that. However, Rusty Bailey, who's the Ward 3 councilman, has been pretty aggressive. He and Councilman Gardner only started their mayoral campaigns once they won re-election to the council just this past June. And so they've only had this last 6 months to be raising money, and he, as you mentioned, had the biggest total for this period. Right.
We should note that even though Atkinson has more in the bank cash on hand, Rusty Bailey actually outraised him in that 6-month period. What are the candidates saying about these numbers? I know, campaign finance numbers, money isn't always everything, but it also is kind of an early indication of a candidate's support. So what about like Councilman Melendrez, Councilman Gardner? They didn't raise as much in that period. What are they saying about these numbers?
Well, they actually both had kind of a similar take on how to win elections in Riverside. A lot of people have talked about how big the city has become, but some of the candidates, including Gardner and Melendrez, still swear by walking the precincts, going door to door, and having that personal contact with voters. Now, with that said, and with them sort of making a show that they don't think that they need to spend a lot of money, they still have other fundraisers planned before the election.
Sure. Now, we should note that these four aren't the only candidates in the race. Who else is in there? I know a number of candidates jumped in after the first of the year, so they wouldn't have any fundraising totals to report for last year. So who else is in this race?
Well, right now there are 3 other candidates, aside from the 4 that we've already discussed. We've got Devon Petrozzillo. She's a teacher, and some people might remember her from the Ward 1 council race that Gardner just won re-election to last June. She also ran for that seat. And she has said that she was not going to raise or spend more than $1,000, so she's doing kind of the low-budget campaign. We also have Peter Benavides. He's a nonprofit CEO here in Riverside. And then also the latest entrant into the race is a man named Brian Pelkowski. He is a former EMT and dispatcher. He told me when I talked to him recently that he's currently unemployed. He and Peter Benavides both just recently got into the race, so they were not required to file any reports. It's not clear yet how much, if any, money they're going to be raising.
Sure. So what's next? Who else can get? I mean, there's still time for other candidates to get in. What's the deadline here for the election?
Well, the filing deadline to actually get your name on the ballot is March 9th. And although it looks like there are potential 7 candidates right now, the people that I've been talking to, the experts, have been saying it wouldn't surprise them if we even see more people sort of throw their names in. But on the other hand, you never know if all of those people are actually going to file by the deadline. I think the ones who've been raising and spending money have the best chance of actually being in there on the ballot.
And of course, this is a race to watch because this is the first time in more than a decade that Ron Loveridge, the current mayor, has not been on the ballot seeking re-election. So Alicia, thanks for joining us today to talk about those fundraising numbers. You've been watching Political Empire right here on PE.com. For all your political news all week long, go to PE.com and follow us there, or pick up a copy of the Press Enterprise. And of course, you can email us at politics@pe.com. So thanks for watching.